Okay, Algebra 1, test number 23, question number 16, which says negative m z to the negative 1 plus mn z to the negative 1 over 5 plus n to the negative 1 z minus mn to the negative 1 z to the negative 1. The instructions are to simplify, I believe. So the first thing we're going to want to do here is change all of our negative exponents to positive exponents. I'm going to do that by working here. Negative m is fine, so I just transfer that down here. But my z to the negative 1 is really the same as 1 over z, so I'm going to write it over z. Then we have plus m n, and then our z to the negative 1 again is the same as writing it over z. So that has changed that top line. All of this will be divided by this portion down here, the denominator. We have 5, which can stay 5. We have plus n to the negative 1, which really will become a denominator here of n, and then z stays on top. Then you have negative m, n to the negative 1 becomes n in the denominator, z to the negative 1 becomes z in the denominator. Okay, the next step we need to take here, we see that these two terms up here have common denominators, so I could write that again if I wanted in a different way. I could write that, a simpler way would just be mn minus m over z. That would be saying the same thing. mn minus m over z. Okay. Then I've got my big division line here. I'm about to now take this line and give it common denominators and rewrite it down here. So our common denominator needs to be nz, as we can see. This one is really 5 over 1, this is over n, this is over z. Our least common multiple here is nz. So this one's fine, our negative m over nz. I'll just write that here. Z needs an n. No, sorry, z needs a z to become nz. So we need to multiply this by z over z, which gives us a z squared over nz. And then our 5, we need to multiply by nz over nz, which gives us 5nz over nz. Okay, now these terms all have a common denominator, and we could write that again as all of these terms simply over an nz. So I'm going to just erase real quick. Give myself a solid line here and write it over nz. Okay, the next step is to multiply this equation by the reciprocal of the denominator so that we're only dealing with one term here. So we're going to multiply these things by the reciprocal of the denominator. What that's going to look like is, if I multiply this by the reciprocal, it just goes away. My denominator goes away. So I'm really just going to show you writing our multiplying by the reciprocal right here. So I'll say multiplied our mn minus m over z by nz over 5nz plus z squared minus m. That is going to give me, well, before I do anything, I can actually simplify this a little. So remember, this denominator has now gone away, and here we are just working with this line of work. Now my z and my z here can cross each other out, so I'm going to do that. Now my equation I can write as this n times mn minus m minus m over 5nz plus z squared minus m. And then the last step of this to solve this equation is to simply use the distributive property here on this top term and rewrite it. So that would become mn squared minus mn over 5nz plus z squared minus m. And that is your answer. I hope that helps. That was a tricky one.